let me just tell you some of the things that I used to do with my students when I was in the classroom. All right, one of the things I used to do was I used to keep on the chalkboard a blank, a frame, a blank picture frame, and I would say to them, okay, here's the frame, the empty frame. If you hear someone saying something to you that you don't particularly like and it rubs you the wrong way, hand that person the frame and simply say, would you please reframe that? And they did it, and it worked, okay? And one day, I guess I must have been having a bad day, and I wasn't my normal calm self. And I must have said something or said something that one of the kids, just didn't feel comfortable with. He went up to the board, got the frame, handed it to me, and said, Miss G, would you please reframe that? And I did, because what I was asking them to do, I needed to do myself. After I had had my training in conflict resolution, I would begin every school year, regardless of what the principal said we needed to do, I would begin with a 3-day workshop on conflict resolution so that it set the tone for that class for the rest of the year. And they loved it because I would do many of the exercises that I actually did with the inmates. And it gave them a sense of community, the ability to communicate a little bit better, to do some creative problem solving, and it simply set the tone for the rest of the year. And this is what teachers should be doing now, but they're not doing it because they don't know how, they don't have the training. People complain, well, we don't have funds, etc., etc. It doesn't take a lot of money to set up a program like that. One of the other things I did in the classroom, and I can tell you that I had these grown boys taller than I was with tears streaming down their cheeks when I would do this. When a kid was misbehaved in class and not acting the way he was supposed to, I would call him aside and very quietly say to him, sweetie, your behavior right now just isn't matching the good person inside you. I know that good person exists, and I want to see him come out. And these big hunks, in my classes, they'd stand there and it was like, oh. And some of them actually cried. And that took place later on in the prison as well, which I'll get into in a minute. So what do we need on campuses, whether it's elementary, middle, high school, or college campuses? We need more training of teachers, instructors in this concept of conflict resolution. We need to teach kids how to communicate better. And I will be sharing some of the brainstorming that came out of sessions with my inmates and what they have to say about how to decrease barriers in communication. It's all about communication and cooperation and creative problem solving. So there is a lot more needed in the schools. Some places are doing a good job, and I'll mention some of the things that are happening elsewhere in a minute. Now, is there a connection between violent behavior and mental illness? I challenge you to go to the internet, and I'm not going to take time to discuss it here because we have a limited amount of time, to see what the experts are saying about that connection. Is there a real connection between mental illness and violent behavior? I think that parents need better parenting skills to see if their children are exhibiting some kind of behavior that seems erratic and needs attention and perhaps needs counseling. And it really has to begin, I think, basically in the home. Okay, I want to talk a little bit now about the alternatives to violence in the prison system. A little bit about AVP. AVP started back in 1975 as a result of a request that the inmates had in one of the prisons in upper New York State. And the Quakers were going into the prisons for other reasons, to visit with inmates and to do other things. And they began talking with these inmates about their needs, and bingo, the Alternatives to Violence Project was born. And so it began with a handful of people. Lee Stern was one of them, and it has grown to all parts of the world. It's an international organization at this point. I think it was 2004, I actually did a presentation in New Zealand, and the presentation was based on what my guys had conjured up as a pre-release workshop for inmates who were looking to be released from prison. They designed it, and they had worked it out and they had used it, and I was just so proud of them, and then when the people who were putting together the international meeting found out about it, they asked if I would present it to them, and I did. And at that international meeting, I met a facilitator who came up to me thanking me for the presentation, and I discovered that at one time he had been one of New Zealand's most wanted men. And because of the program and what he had learned in prison, it sustained him, changed his life. He became a facilitator while in prison, and then when he was released, continued the work. And I was just delighted that this gentleman came up and introduced himself and shared that information with me. So the program does work. Now, I've given you its beginnings as it began in 1975 and how it's grown. And I want to speak briefly about the components of the program. Okay, it's based on 4 things: affirmation of self and others, communication, cooperation, and creative problem solving. And I think too often, and I'm sure there are people sitting here right now, that we don't affirm ourselves on an ongoing basis. I like to look at myself in the mirror, wrinkles, white hair and all, and say, hey kid, you're okay. That's an affirmation. Okay, I have another mantra. I am strong and lovable. And you have to create that within yourself, because once you have it for yourself, then you can distribute it to other people. So that affirmation of self and others is very important. And we had many, many exercises. The AVP manual, actually there are 3 levels of the AVP workshop: the basic, the advanced, and then the training for trainers. And so with each of these components, such as affirmation, communication, cooperation, and problem solving, there are specific exercises that have been designed to get the point across. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you, which I was a little bit disappointed that so many of you don't have a pencil, but those of you who do can do the exercise with me. Okay, and then when it comes to the problem solving, we did role play, okay? And they would decide what the problem had to be, and it was usually something that someone had experienced elsewhere, and they would see how they could use what they had learned in the workshop to overcome the problem and resolve the issue. So that's, you know, that's what the role play was all about. And they were never allowed to play the part of what happened to them in real life. Now, a very interesting thing happened in one community workshop that I was involved in. And the problem that was offered was racial profiling. And there was a gentleman in the room who had suffered from this racial profiling. And so he was not allowed to take the part of the victim. And he took the part of the security guard in the store where it had taken place. And to make a long story short, he did a very, very good job playing the opposite role, trying to see the situation from that guard's, the security guard's point of view, even though he had been very wrongly profiled, because he was dressed in a suit, you know, and suit and tie, wasn't really carrying any bags or anything. The woman on the side of him had 2 shopping bags, and when they're passing through the security thing, he's the one that gets tagged that something was wrong, and he didn't even have any packages. But the point I'm making was, after the whole episode, he left the room in tears, and I went after him, and all I did was take him in my arms and hug him and say, "It's okay, it's okay." But he learned something from that episode, trying to see it from another point of view. Okay, and it was kind of a release for him, you know, because up to that point he felt like a victim. And as long as we allow ourselves to feel like a victim, we're going to be the victim.